Hey everybody, welcome to PMS week. Sam and I realized when we hopped on this call that we are both in it, so we figured that we may as well talk about it today since that's what's on our mind. But before we dive into it, Sam wanted to share some huge wins.
Yeah, hey everyone. So I just wanted to share for those of you who've listened to / watched our episode on sleep, that for the past 3 nights in a row, I have slept 7.5 hours, which is unprecedented for my entire life. Probably not, but since I've been tracking my sleep. And I'm starting to feel like just a lot better than I have in a long time. And I realized essentially the way that I've been able to accomplish that is that I have prioritized getting enough sleep above pretty much everything else. So yeah, and now I feel like I'm starting to reap benefits and therefore I'm feeling more motivated to continue in the good trend.
Can I just highlight that? She said that she had to prioritize sleep.
Above everything else.
That's the key word there. Prioritize.
Which I'm definitely not used to doing. It's definitely a place I've cut corners for years. So, yeah.
Yeah, I find that a lot of the times sleep does not get prioritized, and it's kind of like the last thing. It's like, okay, well, and then I'll sleep at the end of my huge to-do list and getting all these things done, and then we don't get enough sleep. So
yeah,
awesome.
And that phrase, "I'll sleep when I'm dead," I think those of us with ADHD probably think that way a little too much. Well, I think the whole world does, really. So
yeah, like sometimes
people.
yeah, like I've heard like people bragging like, oh, I can function on 4 hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really, can you?
No, you can't. You just don't know that you can't because your cognitive abilities are impaired. So
You're fooling yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, sorry. One more thing. This book is good and is likely to maybe scare you into having better sleep habits and prioritizing it more. So that's all I'll say about sleep for now. So
yeah.
That's this week, Alyssa.
Sorry, what did you say?
I said, that's all I'll say about sleep for now, since it's PMS week now.
Exactly. Now it's PMS week. So let's get into it. So basically what Sam and I know about it, and we were just talking about it a little bit before, is that basically what happens is the week before we get our period, our PMS drops, our estrogen levels drops, and this affects our dopamine levels. And we found a little article from Attitude Mag, and Sam's going to read a little section of it to just help clarify a little bit more. And I just want to say, Sam and I are not doctors. This person in this article is not a doctor. The person who wrote the article, is not a doctor. So please do your own homework and take what we say with a grain of salt and go on forward with that grain of salt.
Yeah, so this is from attitudemag.com. And the author quotes someone named Patricia Quinn, MD. And I just want to say that Quinn is the director of the National Center for Girls and Women with ADHD and is also the author of Understanding Women with ADHD. So to read from the article, the average menstrual cycle is about 28 days, counting from the first day of your period. During the first 2 weeks, known as the follicular phase, levels of estrogen rise steadily, while progesterone levels are low. Estrogen promotes the release of feel-good neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine, in the brain. High dopamine, which is important for those of us with ADHD. Not surprisingly, studies suggest that the first 2 weeks of the cycle go more smoothly for women with ADHD than the second 2 weeks, when progesterone levels rise. During the third and fourth weeks, called the luteal phase, progesterone diminishes the beneficial effects of estrogen on the brain, possibly reducing the effectiveness of stimulant medications. Quinn believes that women with ADHD experience PMS more acutely than women who don't have the condition. Feelings of depression and anxiety typically worsen in women with ADHD during this time, says Quinn. The good news, treating ADHD can improve PMS symptoms too. And I encourage you to go read the article for the next section, which is about solutions. So I just want to quickly acknowledge that although that article talks about women, we do know and acknowledge that there are plenty of people who have uteruses who have menstrual cycles who do not identify as women. So we just want to make it clear that our episode does not only pertain to women. It's anyone who has or had a uterus who could be affected by ADHD and hormone levels. So yeah, that's the excerpt. Alyssa, I'm wondering if you could share a bit about what your symptoms of PMS are.
So I have quite a few. So basically the biggest one that I find impacts me is that my RSD flares up, which is rejection sensitive dysphoria. I'm really big on this because that's what impacts me the most, I would say, in terms of my ADHD. Then also, like yesterday, I felt like my body was like 500 pounds and I couldn't move, and it was just I didn't feel like I could do anything. Putting like getting tasks done, my executive functions, just like it feels like they don't even exist. Everything just seems a lot harder and slower, and I need to be like kinder to myself. But half of it is that I even have to realize that I'm in that stage to begin with. I'm like, what's going on right now? Oh, that's what's going on. What about you, Sam?
Pretty similar story to you, Alyssa. I think that I'm actually not sure if my RSD symptoms flare up. I definitely think that it can be harder to have difficult conversations during this particular period of time, and to not sort of to not sort of misinterpret someone's intentions and meaning with what they're saying. So that's something that I would like to be more mindful of, that I have this tendency during this period of time to sort of interpret things in a particularly negative way.
Yeah, I love that you just said mindful of it. So just like catch what's going on so that you can do something about it rather than just sort of like be a victim in it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I've only fairly recently started tracking my cycles, and I'm in my mid-30s and I wasn't able to track them until recently because they were very irregular. Now my cycle is very regular. It's 28 days, which is the average. But even now, when I can see on my phone, my Fitbit, that my period's going to start in a few days, I only really think of like, oh, when is it actually going to start? Like, when do I need to ensure that I have the ability to physically like deal with having a period?
Yes.
I kind of still forget every month that it affects me in other ways, that there are other things that are going to happen, that things are going to feel a lot harder. And therefore I anticipating that and making sure that my days are not too difficult during that period of time, or rather too packed or whatever, is a way that I could manage it better.
Yeah.
But I think I need to actually like make alarms for myself or something. I don't know. Write it in advance in my calendar. Like, be kind to extra kind to yourself on these particular days, because even knowing that my period's going to start in like 4 days or whatever doesn't mean that I'll remember that. It doesn't mean that I'll remember how to treat myself during that time period.
Yeah, and I could really relate to that. Like, it's more when I'm like in it, when I'm in the like thick of it, that I'm like, oh, that's why everything is so hard right now. Like, I didn't set myself up for success before. It's more like when I'm in it and I'm like, I'm struggling right now. Like, why? Like, just doing simple tasks, trying to accomplish little to-dos is just very, very hard. And I'm like, why? Like, what's happening? That's why. And yeah, like you said, it's like setting up alarms or something like that to know what's, okay, it's coming. Like, prepare yourself.
Yeah, I think, for me, like I'm aware when I look at my like Fitbit app every day, how many more days till my period. But yeah, I'm so used to thinking of it as just like a physical thing that happens to my body, and we talk about PMS, and like PMS, there's all of these like cultural references to people having PMS and painting us as being totally unreasonable or whatever then.
Yes.
But it's, I think that really is probably more presented from the male point of view, right? And therefore, I think that because of that, we miss a lot of the other symptoms that we experience of PMS, because we're not used to thinking of those things as being part of PMS. It's not part of the cultural narrative around PMS.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I guess it's like acknowledging, I don't want to say, like, I'm struggling because I want to say that we are a bit crazy. Like, I feel crazy because all of my emotions are like 10 times higher, and I react to things that I wouldn't normally react to. And it's like, well, why is this bothering me so much? Why is this 10 times? And I don't like that word. I don't like the word crazy, but it just feels unmanageable and out of control.
Right. So what does it mean to you to like feel out of control? What, other than like you feel crazy? I guess maybe what does it feel like when you are in control?
So I'm specifically talking about the emotions. I like how you kind of separated that in two also. Like, there you have the physical, which is what we're taught to deal with all the time. Like, that's what we're told. But there's also this huge emotional side to it. And it's having that emotional side under control and giving yourself the space to pause and to be and to ground yourself and to bring yourself back down and to put yourself in a place of success rather than running from thing to thing to thing to thing, because your executive functions are less during that time, and then you suffer because of it. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
See, like, even right now, I feel like I'm just rambling and like not making a whole lot of sense.
You are making sense. I don't know what it means to ramble, but I appreciate what you're saying right now, Alyssa. But yeah, I think this idea of like setting ourselves up for success, like, what does that look like for us if we know we have very difficult times of the month? We can't always control when things get scheduled. Plenty of people who have 9-to-5s or who have, who, I don't know, probably stay home with their kids full time or whatever. Like, those we can't necessarily like lessen our commitments all the time during like certain times of the month. We don't always have control over that. So I guess there's this other piece of really just engaging in practices of self-compassion during that time frame as well. I mean, I think it's always good to try to engage in those practices, but you know, having some extra self-compassion for yourself during that time frame.
Yeah, and also like I just want to add in there that there's people, unfortunately, that like your immediate circle, your emotions and your reactions and you're not, because we can't perform to the level that we were able to perform a week or two ago, that's going to affect your immediate circle. So it's not only self-compassion, but you need the compassion from them also. And maybe, you know, they need to step it up a little bit and help you during that time. And in my opinion, it's like you need to set up a sort of PMS action plan. You know, okay, so I know I'm going to struggle during that week. Okay, the week before, I'm going to make double the dinners and freeze them. I'm going to ask this person to help me, this person to help me, this person to help me. I'm going to help myself this week by exercising more and eating right more to prepare myself for next week. You know, like having a plan of, okay, this is how I'm going to kind of level myself out a little bit more.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I like that idea of leveling yourself out more. Like giving yourself some sort of like extra sort of wiggle room to sort of not function as highly. I like, you know, the examples you used of cooking extra dinners and freezing them. So you just don't have as much on your plate, and especially with the things that people with ADHD particularly struggle with. I mean, I know personally, I really struggle with like cooking and thinking ahead about my meals and that kind of thing. And I think, thank you, Alyssa. That's a really great idea. I'm going to try to put that in place for next month. Yeah, I really like what you said about making sure that people in your immediate circle can know that they'll, you know, it will be in everyone's best interest to support you in a particular way during a particular time of the month. And setting reminders for them too, so, you know, they don't forget what that means.
Yeah, and also adding that, wow, it's gone. The thought is gone. Sorry about that.
No worries. I feel like that happens to both of us, like at least once an episode. So, yeah. I don't know what I was going to say now either.
Yeah, so like, there's also like the shame and embarrassment attached to that. Like, you know, you can't, it's not that you can't perform at an optimal level. It's that, you know, you're not being fair to yourself by expecting you to perform at that level when things are harder. So it's like, yeah, managing your expectations, managing others' expectations.
Yeah, I really like that. And like knowing that optimal levels, like an optimal level based on a certain type of time of the month will look different from week to week. Yeah, so like you said, managing expectations. I think even maybe after we finish this episode, I might write down a few things for myself to try to remember during this part of the month. And maybe even like write in reminders on that part of my calendar, so that like when past me from like 3 weeks ago, who's feeling really great or whatever, is tempted to schedule myself like a really hectic week, you know, if I had a reminder in that part of my calendar saying, don't do this thing, you know, I'll have to be more mindful of it then.
Yeah. Don't do the thing.
Don't do the thing. Don't do all the things. Don't try to do all the things.
Yeah. Yeah. being kind to yourself this week. Set yourself up for success. But I really like that. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to take a Post-it because that's what I do, and write all the things, set yourself up for success next week. Exercise is a natural way to get dopamine, by the way, which is what we're lacking. So by getting more dopamine, you will help your PMS symptoms. So exercise. Yeah, so maybe I'll put that on my Post-it, and like you, not overbook myself.
Yeah, that's not going to help me this week when I actually have overbooked myself, but
we can help our future selves.
We can help our future selves. That is true. We can affect and change our future.
Yeah. So how about we leave them with that? How are you going to help your future PMS self?
Your future PMS-ridden self. Yeah. How are you going to set that person who is you up for success? What are the reminders you need? What are the reminders other people need? What can other people do to support you during this time frame?
Including us. If you want to send us a message, if you want to send us an email, if you want to be on our accountability train, let us know.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alyssa, and thanks everyone who's been watching.